The morning Adrian Hayes found bloodstains leading to his cafe's back door, he had exactly $47 in his bank account and a daughter waiting for breakfast at home. Standing in the freezing Chicago alley, watching a woman in a $1,000 coat dig through his dumpster with bare hands, he made a choice that would cost him everything he'd fought to protect. He didn't know her name yet, didn't know she'd once commanded boardrooms across 3 continents, didn't know powerful men were hunting her. All he knew was she looked hungrier than he'd ever been, and he'd been hungry plenty. Before we begin, if you're enjoying this story, please hit the like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. Now, let's dive in. Adrian's alarm went off at 4:30, same as always. The sound cut through his studio apartment like a knife, jarring him awake from the kind of sleep that never quite felt like rest. He lay there for a moment in the dark, listening to the radiator knock and hiss, calculating how many hours until his next shift ended. 16 hours between now and when he could crawl back into this bed. His daughter Lily stirred in the corner where he'd set up her small bed, separated from his by a bookshelf and a curtain he'd hung from the ceiling. She was 6 years old and small for her age, with his dark hair and her mother's ability to sleep through anything. He envied her that. The apartment was freezing. Their building's heat had been cutting out randomly for weeks, and the landlord kept promising fixes that never came. Adrian pulled on 2 shirts, jeans, and his work jacket, then grabbed the electric kettle to make Lily's oatmeal before he left. The kettle was one of their essential tools. It heated water faster than the stove, which meant lower gas bills. He'd gotten good at these calculations. Every dollar stretched as far as it could go. Groceries on sale only. Walking instead of the bus when weather permitted. Keeping Lily home from after-school programs that cost money. He'd become an expert in making poverty look like it wasn't destroying them both. Before leaving, he tucked the blanket tighter around Lily and left a note on the counter. Oatmeal in the pot. Add honey. Walk to Mrs. Chen's after breakfast. Love you. Dad. Mrs. Chen was their downstairs neighbor, elderly and kind, who watched Lily most mornings before school. Adrian paid her what he could, usually in leftover cafe pastries and whatever cash he had left after rent. The streets were empty at 5 a.m., dark and bitter cold. Chicago winter had a way of getting into your bones and staying there. Adrian walked the 12 blocks to Brennan's cafe with his head down and his hands shoved deep in his pockets. His breath came out in clouds. His fingers went numb after the first 6 blocks, but he kept walking. The cafe sat on a corner in the financial district, surrounded by glass towers and corporate offices. It was the kind of place that served overpriced lattes to people who made in an hour what Adrian made in a week. He'd worked there for 3 years, ever since Lily's mother disappeared and left him alone with a baby and a pile of debt he hadn't known existed. His manager, Brennan, was already inside when Adrian arrived, counting the register with a cigarette hanging from his mouth despite the no smoking signs plastered everywhere. "You're late," Brennan said without looking up. "I'm 5 minutes early." "Should be 10. Brennan finally glanced at him, eyes flat. "Thompson called in sick again. You're covering his shift too." "Is he?" Adrian's stomach sank. That meant closing tonight, which meant 16 hours on his feet, which meant Mrs. Chen would have to keep Lily overnight, again. "I can't. You've got a job or you don't. Your choice." It wasn't a choice. It never was. Adrian swallowed the protest building in his throat and nodded. "Okay. Good. Get the pastries started. We open in 40. The morning routine took over. Heat the ovens, brew the first pots of coffee, arrange the bakery case, wipe down tables, flip the sign, unlock the door, smile at the customers who never looked him in the eye, make their drinks, take their money, repeat. Around 7, during the first rush, Adrian glanced out the front window while pulling espresso shots. That's when he saw her for the first time. She stood across the street, partially hidden by the bus stop shelter, wearing a long camel-colored coat that probably cost more than Adrian's annual salary. Her hair was dark, pulled back, and even from this distance, he could see how thin she'd gotten. The coat hung wrong on her frame, like she'd recently lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. But what struck him most was the way she stood, perfectly still, watching the cafe with an intensity that made something uncomfortable turn over in Adrian's chest. "Hey." Earth to Adrian. Brennan snapped his fingers in front of Adrian's face. Customers waiting. Adrian blinked and turned back to the espresso machine, but his eyes kept drifting to the window. The woman didn't move. She just stood there in the cold, watching. The morning rush swallowed him. By 9 a.m., the cafe was packed with lawyers and bankers and administrative assistants, all of them ordering complicated drinks and checking their phones, while Adrian worked himself into a rhythm that required no thinking. His hands moved automatically. Pump the syrup, pull the shot, steam the milk, call the name. When he looked outside again around 10, the woman was gone. He told himself it didn't matter. People stood on street corners all the time. Chicago was full of people going nowhere. But something about her stillness bothered him. The way she'd watched the cafe like she was memorizing it. The lunch rush was worse than the morning. Adrian's feet ached. His back ached. He hadn't eaten anything except a stale muffin at 6 a.m., and his stomach was starting to eat itself. Around 2 p.m., when the cafe finally emptied out, Brennan told him to take 15 minutes. Adrian stepped into the alley behind the building to call Mrs. Chen. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice crackling through his cheap phone. "She's fine," Mrs. Chen said before Adrian could ask. "Eating lunch now, chicken and rice." "Thank you, I'm working late tonight. Is it okay if—" "She can sleep here. I'll make up the couch." Relief washed through him. "I'll pay you Friday." "You'll pay me when you can. Go back to work." He hung up and stood in the alley for a moment, tilting his head back against the cold brick wall. Above him, the sky was white and flat, heavy with snow that hadn't fallen yet. His whole body hurt. He was 32 years old and felt 50. That's when he noticed the dumpster. The cafe shared it with 3 other businesses, and it was usually overflowing by mid-afternoon. But today the lid was propped open, and someone was inside. Adrian straightened. "Hey, you can't—" The person turned, and he saw it was the woman from the bus stop. Up close, she looked worse. Her face was drawn and pale, her eyes enormous and shadowed. She held a half-eaten sandwich in one hand, something Adrian recognized from the cafe's trash. They stared at each other. She didn't run, didn't apologize, just stood there in the dumpster, holding stolen garbage, and looked at him with a kind of exhausted defiance that made Adrian's chest hurt. "Jesus," he muttered. "Hold on." He went back inside, grabbed a bag, and filled it with the day's leftover pastries and 2 turkey sandwiches that hadn't sold. Brennan was in the bathroom. Adrian didn't care. He brought the bag outside and held it out to the woman. She stared at it like it might be a trap. "It's food," Adrian said. "Real food, not trash." She climbed out of the dumpster slowly, careful not to make sudden movements, and took the bag with both hands. Her fingers were red from the cold. No gloves. "Why?" Eat. "Because you're hungry. You don't know me. Don't need to." She studied his face for a long moment, and Adrian had the uncomfortable feeling she was seeing right through him, seeing the unpaid bills and the secondhand clothes and the bone-deep exhaustion he carried everywhere. Then she nodded once and turned to leave. "Wait," Adrian said. "What's your name?" She paused, looked back. "Does it matter? I guess not." "Then don't ask." She walked away without another word, disappearing around the corner with the bag of food clutched against her chest. Adrian went back inside. Brennan was screaming about the missing inventory before Adrian even got his coat off. "Where the hell are the turkey sandwiches? We had 4. Now we have 2. They were old. I tossed them." "You tossed $40 of product?" "They were going bad." I decide what goes bad." Brennan stepped closer, his face red. "You pull that again. You're fired. You get me?" Adrian nodded, his jaw ached from clenching. "Yeah, I get you." The rest of the day crawled. By the time Adrian locked the cafe doors at 9 p.m., his feet were screaming and his vision was blurring at the edges. He walked home through the dark, empty streets, too tired to feel the cold. The apartment was silent when he got back. No Lily. Just silence and darkness and the broken radiator ticking uselessly in the corner. He ate cereal standing at the counter, too exhausted to sit, then fell into bed fully clothed. The next morning, the woman was back. Adrian saw her while opening the cafe at 5:30. Same spot, same coat, same stillness. This time he didn't hesitate. He made coffee and a breakfast sandwich before Brennan arrived, then walked across the street and held them out to her. She looked at the food, at his face, then back at the food. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you're here. You don't know anything about me. I know you're cold. I know you're hungry. That's enough. Eat it." She took the coffee first, wrapping both hands around it like the warmth hurt, then the sandwich. "Thank you." "What's your name?" Adrian asked again. "Still doesn't matter." "Okay, I'm Adrian." "I didn't ask." "I know." He smiled. "See you tomorrow." He crossed back to the cafe and didn't look back, but he felt her watching him. Felt it the same way you feel someone staring at you in a dark room. It became routine. Every morning before opening, Adrian brought her coffee and food. She never asked for it. Never thanked him after that first day. But she was always there, and he was always crossing the street with a paper bag. Brennan noticed the missing inventory. He always noticed. But Adrian had gotten good at lying. Customer ordered it, then changed their mind. "I ate it myself." Dropped it. Left it in the oven too long. The lies came easier each time. 2 weeks in, the woman spoke first. "You're going to lose your job doing this," she said when Adrian handed her the coffee. "Probably." "Then why?" Adrian shrugged. "Nobody else is." That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." She studied him with those dark, sharp eyes. "You're a fool." "Yeah, I've heard that before." Something that might have been a smile flickered across her face. "What's your daughter's name?" Adrian's chest tightened. "How do you know I have a daughter?" "Yeah, E. You mentioned her once, on the phone." He'd forgotten she'd been there that day, in the alley. He'd forgotten anyone was listening. "Lily. Her name's Lily. How old?" 6. The woman nodded slowly, like this explained something. "You should be careful, Adrian." "Careful of what?" "Of people who notice kindness." She took the food and walked away before he could ask what the hell that meant. That night, Adrian's apartment was vandalized. He came home after his shift to find the door hanging open, the cheap lock broken. Inside, everything was trashed. Furniture overturned, clothes pulled from drawers, Lily's toys crushed underfoot, the curtains separating their sleeping areas ripped down. His knees went weak. He grabbed the door frame to steady himself. "No. No, no, no." Mrs. Chen appeared in the hallway behind him. "Adrian, oh, thank God. Lily's with me. She's safe. She didn't see." "What happened?" "I don't know. I heard noise around 6, crashing. When I came up, your door was open like this. I called the police, but they said without evidence." She trailed off, her lined face creased with worry. "They said it was probably a random break-in. Kids, maybe." But Adrian knew it wasn't random. Nothing was taken. His laptop was still there, old and worthless, but intact. Lily's piggy bank untouched. This wasn't robbery. This was a message. He spent the night cleaning while Lily slept at Mrs. Chen's. By dawn, the apartment looked almost normal, but the lock was still broken, and Adrian's hands shook every time he thought about someone being here, in their space, touching their things. He called in sick to work. Brennan screamed at him over the phone, but Adrian barely heard it. He was too busy nailing boards over the broken lock and checking every corner of the apartment for anything that had been planted or taken. That afternoon, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. Then a man's voice, smooth and cold. "Stay away from her." "What? Who?" "Stay away from her. Or next time, it won't be your apartment." The line went dead. Adrian sat on the floor, staring at the phone in his hand. His whole body had gone cold. They knew where he lived. They knew about Lily. They'd been inside his home. He should have been terrified. He was terrified. But underneath the fear was something else, something hot and furious. Because whoever these people were, they thought he'd break this easily. Thought they could threaten him once and he'd disappear. They didn't know what it took to survive as a single father in a city that wanted you gone. Didn't know how many times Adrian had already been broken and put himself back together. Didn't know he'd already lost everything that mattered once, and he'd be damned if he let it happen again. The next morning, he brought the woman her coffee. She took one look at his face and went still. "What happened?" "Someone broke into my apartment." "I told you to be careful." "I don't care." "You should." "Well, I don't." Adrian set the coffee down on the bus stop bench. I don't know who you are or what you're running from. I don't need to know. But I'm not going to stop helping you because some asshole thinks he can scare me. Adrian? No. He cut her off. I've been scared my whole life. Scared I can't pay rent. Scared I'll lose my daughter. Scared I'm failing at everything. So whoever you are and whatever this is, I'm already scared. One more thing doesn't matter. She stared at him. For the first time since he'd met her, something cracked in her expression. Something raw. You have no idea what you're risking. Then tell me. I can't. Then I'm bringing you coffee tomorrow. Adrian, see you tomorrow. He walked back to the cafe without waiting for her response. That night, his phone rang again. Same unknown number. You were warned, the voice said. Go to hell, Adrian replied and hung up. The next morning, his tires were slashed. All 4 of them. He stood in the parking lot behind his building, staring at the rubber strips hanging limp, and felt the frustration rise up in his throat like bile. He didn't own this car. It was borrowed from Mrs. Chen's nephew, and now he'd have to find money he didn't have to fix it. But when he got to the cafe 2 hours late, having walked the whole way, the woman was waiting, and for the first time she smiled when she saw him. You came, she said. I said I would. Most people don't mean it when they say things like that. I'm not most people. No. She took the coffee he offered. You're not. For a long moment, they stood there in the freezing morning, 2 strangers connected by something neither of them could name. Then the woman spoke again, quieter this time. My name is Vivian. Nice to meet you, Vivian. You're going to regret this. Probably. Adrian smiled. But at least I'll regret it knowing I tried. Vivian looked at him with something in her eyes that might have been hope or might have been grief. It was hard to tell. Thank you, Adrian. Don't thank me yet. Why not? Because it's about to get a lot worse. He was right. That night, Brennan fired him. You've been stealing, Brennan said flatly, holding up a log of missing inventory. Every morning for 3 weeks. Don't bother lying. I've been tracking it. I can explain. I don't care. You're done. Get out. Adrian stood in the cafe's back office, his whole world collapsing. Please, I need this job. I have a daughter. Should have thought about that before you started stealing. I wasn't stealing. He stopped. How did he explain? How did he tell his manager he'd been feeding a stranger who might be in danger? It sounded insane. You were what? Brennan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Go on. Explain. Adrian said nothing. There was no explanation that would save him. That's what I thought. Get your things and get out. Adrian cleaned out his locker in silence. His hands moved automatically. Jacket, extra shirt, the photo of Lily he kept taped inside the door. When he walked out of Brennan's cafe for the last time, the sun was setting and the streets were full of people heading home from work. People with jobs. People with futures. He stood on the sidewalk, breathing the cold air, trying to figure out what to do next. Rent was due in 12 days. He had $47. No job. A broken lock. Slashed tires. And a daughter who depended on him for everything. He should have stopped helping Vivian. Should have walked away the moment things got dangerous. But when he thought about her standing alone in the cold, digging through trash just to eat, he couldn't do it. He couldn't walk away. So he didn't. The next morning at 5:30 a.m., Adrian walked to the bus stop where Vivian waited. He held no coffee this time, no food, just himself. She saw him coming and stood. You lost your job. It wasn't a question. Yeah, because of me. Because of whoever's threatening me. That's not your fault. It is. Vivian's voice cracked. It's all my fault. You should hate me. I don't. Why not? Because I know what it's like to have everything taken from you. Adrian stepped closer. I know what it's like to be alone and scared and have nobody give a damn. So no, I don't hate you. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back fiercely. You're an idiot. Probably. You're going to lose everything. Already did that once. I'm still here. She laughed, but it came out broken. You don't understand what you've gotten into. Then tell me. Vivian looked at him for a long moment. Then finally she nodded. Okay, but not here. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Come on. She walked away, and Adrian followed. He didn't know where they were going, didn't know what came next. But for the first time in 3 years, he felt like he was moving towards something instead of just surviving. It was a start. Vivian led him to an abandoned hotel 6 blocks from the café. The building looked condemned, windows boarded up, and a rusted chain hanging across the entrance. She ducked under the chain without hesitation, and Adrian followed, his heart hammering against his ribs. Inside, the lobby was gutted. Broken furniture, graffiti covering the walls, the smell of mold and old rain. Vivian moved through it like she'd walked this path 100 times, navigating around debris until they reached a stairwell. She climbed to the 3rd floor, down a hallway where the carpet had been torn up in strips, and stopped at a door that didn't look any different from the others, except it still had a functioning lock. She pulled a key from her coat pocket and opened it. The room was small and freezing. A mattress on the floor covered with thin blankets. A hot plate plugged into an illegal extension cord running to the hallway outlet. Plastic bags filled with clothes stacked in the corner. A laptop balanced on top of an overturned crate, its screen dark. Adrian stood in the doorway, taking it all in. This was where she'd been living. Not a shelter. Not some temporary situation. This. Come in or don't, Vivian said without looking at him. But close the door. Heat doesn't stay in with it open. He stepped inside and shut the door behind him. The space got even smaller with 2 people in it. Vivian sat on the edge of the mattress, pulling her coat tighter around herself, and gestured for Adrian to take the only other spot to sit, which was the floor. He sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Adrian didn't push. He'd learned patience the hard way, during the months after Lily's mother left, when his daughter wouldn't talk and he'd had to wait her out until she was ready. Finally, Vivian exhaled and looked at him. My name is Vivian Sinclair. Does that mean anything to you? Adrian shook his head. Should it? 6 months ago it would have. I was CEO of Sinclair Global. We handled international development projects, infrastructure, logistics, 63 offices across 4 continents, $18 billion in annual revenue. She paused. I built it from the ground up. My father started the company, but I made it what it was. What happened? I got engaged to the wrong man. Her voice went flat. Marcus Hale. I met him at a conference in Berlin 3 years ago. He was charming, smart, worked in finance. We got close fast, maybe too fast, but I thought I'd finally found someone who understood what it meant to run a company like mine. Someone who didn't resent the hours or the travel. Someone who could handle it. Adrian stayed quiet, listening. 2 years ago, I made him CFO of Sinclair Global. Everyone told me it was a mistake to mix business and personal, but I didn't listen. Marcus was good at his job. Brilliant, actually. He restructured our international accounts, renegotiated contracts, saved us millions. I trusted him completely. She stopped, her jaw tightening. That was my first mistake. What was the second? Not seeing the coup coming. Vivian stood and walked to the window, staring out at the Chicago skyline barely visible through the boarded slats. Marcus spent 2 years quietly building alliances with my executive board, feeding them lies, planting doubt, making them believe I was unstable, reckless, steering the company toward disaster. And because I was too focused on the work, I didn't notice until it was too late. What did he do? 6 months ago, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. I wasn't invited. By the time I found out, they'd already voted. Unanimous decision to remove me as CEO. They claimed I'd been embezzling funds, falsifying contracts, putting the company at risk. None of it was true, but they had documents, forged signatures, fake emails, an entire paper trail Marcus had spent years creating. Adrian felt his stomach turn. They framed you. Perfectly. Vivian's voice was bitter. Within 24 hours, the board froze my accounts, seized my assets, and filed criminal charges. The media picked it up immediately. My face was everywhere. Disgraced CEO, corporate thief, financial criminal. I went from untouchable to destroyed in a single news cycle. But you didn't do it. No. But try proving that when the evidence says otherwise. Try proving anything when you have no money, no lawyers, and no one willing to risk their career to help you. She turned back to face him. I went into hiding the day the charges were filed. I've been moving between abandoned buildings and shelters ever since, trying to stay invisible while I figure out how to fight back. Adrian processed this slowly. It sounded insane, like something from a movie, not real life. But looking at Vivian standing in this freezing room wearing a coat that cost more than his car, he believed every word. "Why are they still after you, Gyat?" he asked. "If they already won, why threaten me? Why trash my apartment?" Because I'm still dangerous to them." Vivian crossed her arms. "Marcus and the board didn't just want control of Sinclair Global. They wanted me erased, completely destroyed. No credibility, no resources, no way to fight back. But I have something they need, and as long as I have it, they'll keep coming." "What do you have?" She walked to the laptop, opened it, and typed something. The screen lit up, showing lines of code and file directories Adrian didn't understand. Before everything fell apart, I built a backup server. Hidden. Off the books. It contains copies of every legitimate financial record Sinclair Global ever produced. Every real contract. Every authentic signature. Everything that proves the documents Marcus used to frame me were forgeries. Adrian leaned forward. "That's proof. That clears your name." It would, if I could access it. Vivian's expression darkened. "The server is hidden inside Sinclair Global's headquarters, physically isolated from the main network. The only way to retrieve the files is to be inside the building, at a specific terminal, with administrative access credentials that only I have. But the building is locked down. Security everywhere. Cameras. Keycard access. And Marcus has people watching for me constantly. If I get within a block of that building, I'm arrested." "So you're stuck." I was stuck. She looked at him. "Until you." Adrian's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means you're not on their radar. You're nobody to them. Just a cafe worker who made a stupid mistake getting involved with the wrong person. They don't see you as a threat." "I'm not sure that's a compliment." It's not. But it's useful." Vivian sat down across from him, her eyes sharp. "In 2 weeks, Sinclair Global is hosting their annual gala. Every executive, every board member, every major investor will be there. The building will be packed with hundreds of people, caterers, security spread thin trying to manage the crowd. It's the one night of the year when I might be able to slip inside unnoticed. You want to break into your own company. I want to take back what's mine." Adrian stared at her. That's insane." "Yes, you'll get caught. Probably." "Then why are you telling me this?" Vivian leaned forward, her voice low and urgent. "Because I can't do it alone. I need someone who can move through that building without raising suspicion. Someone who can distract security, create diversions, buy me time to reach the server room. Someone they won't see coming." "You want me to help you?" "Yes." "Why would I do that? I just lost my job. I have a daughter. I have nothing left to lose." Vivian cut him off. "They've already targeted you, Adrian. They've already shown you what they're willing to do. Do you really think they'll just leave you alone now? Do you think they'll let you walk away?" Adrian's hands clenched. He wanted to argue. Wanted to say she was wrong, but he couldn't, because she wasn't. "If we do this," Vivian continued, "and we succeed, I get my company back. I clear my name. And I make sure the people who destroyed my life, the people who threatened yours, face consequences. Real consequences. And if we fail, then we both go down. But at least we go down fighting." Yeah. Adrian sat back against the wall, his mind racing. This was insane. Completely inane. Breaking into a corporate headquarters during a gala filled with powerful people who wanted Vivian destroyed. It was the kind of plan that only worked in movies, and even then, barely. But the alternative was going home to his broken apartment, his slashed tires, and his daughter, knowing that at any moment those same people could come back and hurt her to get to him. Knowing he'd spent his whole life being scared and small and invisible, and it hadn't protected him at all. "When's the gala?" he asked. 12 days. That's not a lot of time. It's all we have. It's. Adrian looked at Vivian, really looked at her. She was exhausted, half-starved, living in a condemned building with nothing but a laptop and a plan that would probably get them both arrested. But there was something in her eyes that he recognized. Something he'd seen in the mirror plenty of times. Desperation mixed with determination. The look of someone who'd already lost everything and had stopped caring about the cost of trying to get it back. "Okay," he said. "I'm in." Vivian blinked. "Just like that? Just like that? You don't want to think about it?" "I've been thinking about it since the moment they broke into my home." Adrian stood up. "You said they won't see me coming, so tell me what you need me to do." For the first time since he'd met her, Vivian smiled. Not the broken, exhausted smile from before, but something real. Something that made her look like the person she used to be. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We haven't done anything." "We will." The next 12 days were chaos. Vivian laid out the plan in pieces. The gala started at 7. Guests would arrive between 7 and 8, filtering through security checkpoints at the main entrance. Adrian's job was to get inside as part of the catering staff. Vivian had connections, people who owed her favors from before everything fell apart, and she used one to get Adrian onto the catering roster under a fake name. "They'll do a basic background check," Vivian explained, "but it's surface level. As long as you don't have a criminal record and your ID looks legitimate, you'll pass." "I don't have a fake ID." "You will." She introduced him to a man named Dev, a wiry guy in his 40s who ran a print shop in Pilsen. Dev asked no questions, took Adrian's photo, and handed him a driver's license with a name Adrian didn't recognize 2 hours later. "You're Carlos Mendez now," Dev said. "Memorize the address. Memorize the birth date. If anyone asks, you've been working catering gigs for 3 years. Adrian stared at the ID. "This is illegal." "Very," Dev agreed. "Don't get caught." "Yeah." The next problem was Lily. Adrian couldn't tell her what he was doing, couldn't explain why he suddenly had night meetings and was gone for hours at a time. He hated lying to her, but the truth was worse. So he told her he'd found a new job, night shifts at a warehouse, and Mrs. Chen agreed to keep watching her in the evenings. Lily didn't question it. She was 6. She trusted him. That trust felt like a weight Adrian carried everywhere. During the days, he and Vivian mapped out the building's layout. She'd worked there for years and knew every floor, every hallway, every exit. The server room was on the 18th floor, tucked behind executive offices that would be empty during the gala. Getting there meant taking the service elevator, bypassing security checkpoints, and hoping nobody noticed one extra caterer wandering where he shouldn't be. "The timing has to be perfect," Vivian said, tracing the route on a blueprint she'd somehow acquired. "You'll enter with the catering staff at 6:30. Setup runs until 7. During that window, security is focused on the main entrances. That's when you slip away, take the service elevator to 18, and prop open the stairwell door for me." "How do you get inside?" Delivery entrance, back of the building. Security there is lighter, and I still have an old key card that might work. If it doesn't, I'll improvise." "That's not a plan." "It's the best I have." Adrian rubbed his face. "This is insane." "You've said that before." "It's still true, say it." They practiced the route obsessively. Vivian timed every movement, every turn, every elevator ride. Adrian walked through it in his head until he could see it with his eyes closed. 6:30, service entrance. Catering setup. 18 minutes until 7, slip away. Service elevator. 18th floor, stairwell. Wait, the problem was everything that could go wrong. Security noticing, cameras catching them, the keycard failing, Adrian getting lost, Vivian getting caught. The list was endless. "What happens if you're arrested?" Adrian asked one night. They were in the hotel room, huddled near the hot plate where Vivian was heating water for instant noodles. It was 9 p.m. and freezing, and Adrian's fingers ached from the cold. "Then you leave," Vivian said simply. "You walk out, go home, and pretend none of this happened." "That's it?" "That's it." "What about you?" "I'll deal with it." "That's not an answer." Vivian looked at him, her face shadowed. "Adrian, if I'm caught, it's over. They'll add breaking and entering to the charges. I'll go to prison. There's no scenario where you can help me. So if it goes wrong, you save yourself. I'm not leaving you. You will if you're smart. I'm not smart. You said so yourself. She almost smiled. I called you a fool. It's different. Not really. They ate the noodles in silence, passing the single fork back and forth. The food was terrible, barely warm and tasting like salt and chemicals. But Adrian's stomach had stopped caring about quality months ago. He ate because he needed to, not because he wanted to. Halfway through the meal, Vivian spoke again. Why are you really doing this? Adrian paused, the fork halfway to his mouth. You already know why. No, I know the reasons you told me. I don't know the real one. He set the fork down, stared at the peeling wallpaper across the room. When Lily's mother left, she didn't just leave me. She disappeared. One day she was there, the next she was gone. No note, no explanation, just gone. And I spent months trying to figure out what I did wrong, what I could have done differently, how I could have been better, smarter, more successful, more something. Adrian, I'm not finished. He looked at her. It took me a long time to realize it wasn't about me. She left because she wanted to, and nothing I did would have changed that. But by then, I'd already become someone who believed I deserved to be abandoned, someone who believed I wasn't worth fighting for. And I've been that person ever since. Vivian said nothing, just watched him with those dark, steady eyes. So when I see someone else being abandoned, Adrian continued, someone being erased and discarded like they don't matter, it makes me furious. Because I know what that feels like. And I'm tired of accepting it. For me, for you, for anyone. The room was silent except for the hum of the hot plate. You're not a fool, Vivian said quietly. You're the first person in 3 years who's treated me like I'm still human. That's not foolish. That's... She didn't finish. Didn't need to. Adrian picked up the fork again. Finish your noodles. We've got work to do. The days blurred together. Adrian spent mornings with Lily, afternoons planning with Vivian, and nights lying awake in his apartment, staring at the ceiling and wondering if he'd lost his mind. His bank account was nearly empty. Rent was due in 4 days, and he didn't have it. Mrs. Chen kept telling him not to worry, but he worried anyway. Worrying was all he knew how to do. 3 days before the gala, Adrian's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Mr. Hayes? The voice was smooth, educated, unfamiliar. My name is Marcus Hale. I believe you know who I am. Adrian's blood went cold. How did you get this number? That's not important. What's important is that you stop what you're doing. I'm not doing anything. Don't insult my intelligence. Marcus's tone didn't change, still calm and polite, which made it worse. You've been spending time with Vivian Sinclair. You've been helping her. I'm calling to strongly suggest you stop. Or what? Or your daughter gets hurt. Adrian's vision tunneled. His hand gripped the phone so hard it hurt. You touch her, I'll kill you. Works. No, you won't. You're a minimum wage worker with no resources and no leverage. You'll do exactly nothing because that's what people like you always do. Marcus paused. Vivian is a criminal, Mr. Hayes. A thief. She's manipulating you, using you, and when this is over, she'll discard you like garbage. Walk away now, and I'll make sure you're left alone. Keep helping her, and I'll make sure you lose everything. The line went dead. Adrian stood in his apartment, shaking with rage and terror. They'd threatened Lily, directly, specifically. These people had no boundaries, no limits. They would hurt a 6-year-old girl to protect themselves. He should have quit, should have walked away, should have taken Lily and disappeared somewhere Marcus Hale and his people couldn't find them. Instead, he called Vivian. They threatened Lily, he said when she answered. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm sorry, I don't want sorry. I want to burn them down. Adrian, no, you were right. They're not going to leave me alone. They're going to keep coming until I'm destroyed. And then they'll come after my daughter anyway, because that's what people like them do. So we're doing this, and we're going to win. You don't know that. I don't care. I'm done being scared. Another pause. Then Vivian's voice, steady and certain. Okay, then let's finish this. The day of the gala arrived. Adrian woke at 4 a.m., too anxious to sleep. He made breakfast for Lily, walked her to school early, and spent 20 minutes watching her through the fence during morning recess. She looked so small, so fragile. He wanted to grab her and run, take her somewhere safe, but nowhere was safe anymore. At noon, he met Vivian at the hotel. She'd cleaned up somehow, washed her hair, found clothes that didn't look like she'd been living in them for months. She almost looked like the CEO she used to be. "Ready?" she asked. "No." "Good. Neither am I." They reviewed the plan one last time. Adrian left first, heading to the catering company's staging area. The supervisor barely glanced at his fake ID before handing him a uniform and pointing him toward a truck. "You're on tray service," the supervisor said. "Stick with your group. Don't wander. Don't talk to guests. Just smile and serve." Adrian nodded, his heart hammered in his chest. The truck dropped them at Sinclair Global's service entrance at 6:30. The building was massive, glass and steel stretching up into the gray Chicago sky. Security waved them through after a cursory bag check, and suddenly Adrian was inside. The kitchen was chaos. Dozens of caterers rushing around, trays slammed everywhere, someone screaming about burned appetizers. Adrian grabbed a tray of champagne glasses and followed his group toward the main ballroom. The gala space was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, tables covered in white linens and gold accents. Guests were starting to arrive, men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns, everyone dripping with wealth Adrian couldn't imagine. He circulated with the tray, offering champagne, keeping his head down. Security was everywhere, but they weren't watching the staff. They were watching the doors. At 7:15, during a shift change, Adrian slipped away. The service elevator was exactly where Vivian said it would be. He stepped inside, pressed 18, and held his breath as the doors closed. The elevator climbed, his palms were sweating, his mouth was dry. The doors opened on the 18th floor. Empty hallway, dim lights. Adrian moved quickly, found the stairwell, and propped the door open with a wedge he'd hidden in his jacket. Now he waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Adrian started to panic. What if Vivian couldn't get inside? What if her keycard didn't work? What if she'd been caught? Then the stairwell door pushed open, and Vivian appeared. She looked terrified and determined in equal measure. "Let's go, because they moved through the executive offices toward the server room. Every shadow felt like a threat. Every sound made Adrian's heart stop. But the floor stayed empty. Everyone was downstairs at the gala. The server room door was locked. Vivian pulled out a small device, attached it to the keypad, and waited while it cycled through codes. 30 seconds, 45, a full minute. The lock clicked green. They were inside. The server room was cold and hummed with the sound of machines. Vivian went straight to a terminal, typed in her credentials, and started downloading files. 5 minutes, she said. Maybe less. Adrian stood by the door, watching the hallway. Empty. Still empty. 4 minutes. 3. Then he heard voices. "Someone's coming," Adrian hissed. Vivian didn't look up. "Almost done. We don't have time. I need 30 more seconds." The voices got louder. Footsteps. Adrian made a decision. He stepped into the hallway and closed the server room door behind him, leaving Vivian inside. 2 security guards rounded the corner and stopped when they saw him. "What are you doing up here?" one of them demanded. Adrian's mind raced. "I got lost. I'm with catering. Someone said there was a service elevator. This floor's restricted." "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I just... Come with us." They grabbed his arms, and Adrian didn't resist. He let them pull him toward the main elevator, away from the server room, away from Vivian. As they dragged him past the stairwell, he caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows. Vivian, slipping away. The guards hauled him downstairs into a security office and started asking questions. Who was he? What was he doing? Why was he on a restricted floor? Adrian stuck to his story. He was new. He got lost. He didn't know the rules. The supervisor must have forgotten to brief him. They didn't believe him, but they couldn't prove anything. After 20 minutes of interrogation, they escorted him out of the building and told him he was banned from all future events. Adrian walked away, his whole body shaking. He didn't know if Vivian had gotten the files, didn't know if she'd escaped, didn't know if they'd been caught on camera. But he'd done his part. Now all he could do was wait. Adrian walked 12 blocks before he felt safe enough to stop. His legs were shaking, his shirt soaked with sweat despite the freezing night air. He ducked into a 24-hour diner, ordered coffee he couldn't afford, and sat in a booth by the window where he could watch the street. His phone stayed silent. No call from Vivian, no text, nothing. He checked it every 30 seconds anyway. The waitress refilled his cup twice before finally asking if he wanted food. Adrian shook his head. His stomach was too twisted to eat. All he could think about was Vivian still trapped inside that building. Or worse, already in handcuffs being dragged into a police car while Marcus Hale watched and smiled. At 11 p.m., his phone finally buzzed. The text was short. "I'm out. Don't come to the hotel. I'll find you." Adrian sagged against the booth, relief flooding through him so hard he thought he might pass out. She'd made it. Whatever happened after he'd been dragged away, Vivian had gotten out. He paid for the coffee with the last bills in his wallet and stepped outside. The streets were empty now, just wind and scattered trash blowing across the pavement. He started walking home, hands shoved in his pockets, eyes down. Halfway there, a car pulled up beside him. A black sedan with tinted windows. Adrian's whole body tensed, ready to run, but then the passenger window rolled down and Vivian leaned across the seat. "Get in." He got in. The car smelled like leather and expensive cologne. The driver was an older man Adrian didn't recognize, gray-haired and silent. Vivian sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hands clenched in her lap, staring straight ahead. "Are you okay?" Adrian asked. "I got the files." "That's not what I asked." She finally looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. "I'm fine. You?" "They kicked me out, banned me from the building, but they didn't arrest me." "Good." "Who's this?" Adrian nodded toward the driver. "Someone who used to work for me, someone I trust." Vivian's voice was tight. "He's taking us somewhere safe." "Boy, Brian." They drove in silence through empty streets, heading south toward neighborhoods Adrian didn't know. Industrial areas, warehouses, places that looked abandoned even when they weren't. Finally, the car pulled into a parking garage beneath a low-rise office building. The driver killed the engine. "We can talk here," Vivian said. "No cameras." They got out. The garage was freezing and smelled like oil and concrete. Vivian opened her coat and pulled out a flash drive, holding it up like evidence. "Everything's on here," she said. "Every legitimate contract Sinclair Global ever signed. Every authentic financial record. Every piece of proof that the documents Marcus used to frame me were forgeries. It's all here." Adrian stared at the tiny drive. "That's it? That's what we risked everything for?" "Masha, was shot." "This is enough to destroy them." Vivian's hands trembled slightly. "But we need to be smart about how we use it. If I just hand this to the police, Marcus will bury it. He has connections everywhere, judges, prosecutors, people who owe him favors. We need to go public, make it impossible to ignore." "How?" "The gala's still happening, right now. Everyone important is still in that building, board members, investors, media. If we can broadcast this live during the event, if we can show everyone exactly what Marcus did, there's no way to cover it up." Adrian's chest tightened. "You want to go back?" "No, I want you to go back." "What?" Vivian stepped closer, her voice urgent. "Security threw you out, but they didn't flag you as a serious threat. You're just some idiot caterer who got lost. If you go back now, claim you left something behind, your jacket or your phone, you might be able to talk your way inside. And then what? I can't access the building's broadcast system. I don't even know where it is." "I do." She pulled out her phone and showed him a building schematic. "The AV control room is on the second floor. That's where they're running all the gala's video feeds. If you can get inside, plug this drive into any terminal, and run the program I've loaded, it'll override their system and broadcast the files to every screen in the ballroom." Adrian stared at her. "You're insane." "We've established that. I'll get caught. Probably." "Then why would I do this?" "Because it's the only way." Vivian's eyes were fierce. "Marcus will be in that ballroom. The entire board will be there. Every person who destroyed my life and threatened yours will be watching when the truth comes out. They'll have nowhere to hide. No time to spin the story, no way to make it disappear. This ends tonight, Adrian, one way or another." Ishil. He wanted to say no. Wanted to tell her this was too much, too risky, too likely,
to end with him in handcuffs or worse. But when he thought about Marcus Hale's voice on the phone threatening Lily,
when he thought about his trashed apartment and his slashed tires and every careful threat designed to make him disappear, the word wouldn't come. "What happens to you if I do this?" he asked. "I wait here. If it works, I call my lawyers and turn myself in publicly with the evidence in hand. If it doesn't work, I run." "That's not much of a plan. It's all I have." Adrian took the flash drive from her hand. It was so small, so light. Hard to believe something this tiny could bring down an empire. "If I get arrested," he said slowly, "promise me you'll make sure Lily's taken care of. Mrs. Chen, my neighbor, she'll watch her, but Lily will need money, support, someone to— You're not getting arrested. Promise me." Vivian's expression cracked. "I promise." "Okay." Adrian pocketed the drive. "Tell me how to find the AV room." The driver took him back to Sinclair Global and dropped him 2 blocks away. Adrian walked the rest of the distance alone, his heart hammering with every step. The building was still lit up, still crawling with security, still hosting a party for people who'd never given him a second thought. He approached the service entrance where he'd been kicked out an hour earlier. Different guards now. That was good. He put on his best embarrassed smile and walked up to them. "Hey, sorry. I know I'm not supposed to be here, but I left my phone inside earlier. Any chance I can just run in and grab it? I'll be 2 minutes." The guards looked at each other. One of them sighed. "Where'd you leave it?" "Kitchen area. I think it fell out of my pocket when I was carrying trays." "You got ID?" Adrian handed over the fake license. The guard barely glanced at it before waving him through. 2 minutes. Then you're gone." "Yeah, absolutely. Thank you." He stepped inside, adrenaline screaming through his veins. The kitchen was still chaotic, staff rushing everywhere. Nobody looked at him twice. He grabbed an empty tray to look busy and headed for the service stairs. 2nd floor. Vivian said the AV control room would be near the main ballroom, behind a door marked staff only. Adrian found it exactly where she'd described, tucked at the end of a hallway lined with conference rooms. The door was locked. Of course it was. Adrian knocked, waited, knocked again. The door opened. A young guy in a headset, maybe 25, irritated. "What?" "Hey, sorry, the kitchen sent me up. Something about a microphone issue?" "We don't have a microphone issue. That's what they told me. I'm just the messenger." Adrian shrugged. "You want me to tell them everything's fine?" The guy hesitated, then stepped aside. "Whatever. Make it fast." Adrian walked in. The control room was small and packed with equipment. Monitors showing feeds from cameras all over the building. Soundboards. Computers running presentation software. The young tech was already back at his station, focused on adjusting audio levels. Adrian's eyes found the main terminal, the one running the ballroom's video feeds. He moved toward it, trying to look casual, like he belonged there. "So where's the mic problem?" the tech asked without turning around. "They said backstage left. That mic's been fine all night. Like I said, just the messenger." Adrian reached the terminal. His hand closed around the flash drive in his pocket. All he had to do was plug it in, run Vivian's program, let it do its work. His fingers were shaking. He pulled out the drive, leaned toward the USB port. "Hey, what are you doing?" Adrian froze. The tech had turned around, was staring at him. "I said, what are you doing?" "Think. Say something, anything." They told me to check the cables back here, make sure nothing's loose." "Nobody touches this equipment except me." The tech stood up, suspicious now. "Who sent you up here?" "Kitchen manager. I don't know his name." "We don't have a kitchen manager." Adrian's pulse spiked. The tech was reaching for something on his belt. A radio. If he called security, this was over. So Adrian did the only thing he could think of. He plugged in the drive, double-clicked the program Vivian had loaded, and stepped back. "What did you just do?" The tech lunged for the terminal, but it was too late. The program was already running, uploading files, overriding the system. On the monitors, Adrian watched the ballroom feeds flicker, then cut to black, then fill with text, financial records, contracts, email chains. Everything Vivian had hidden on that server, now streaming across every screen in the building. The tech stared. "What the hell?" Adrian didn't wait. He ran. Out of the control room, down the hallway, toward the service stairs. Behind him, alarms started blaring, voices shouting. the whole building suddenly alert and angry. He hit the stairwell and took the steps two at a time, his legs burning. Ground floor. He burst into the service corridor just as security came flooding in from the opposite direction. "Stop! Don't move!" Adrian ran anyway. Through the kitchen, past screaming caterers, out the service door into the freezing night. He heard footsteps behind him but didn't look back. Just ran. 3 blocks. 4. His lungs screamed, his vision blurred, but he kept running until the footsteps faded and the alarms became distant and he was alone in some dark alley, bent over with his hands on his knees, gasping. He'd done it. Whatever happened next, he'd done it. Inside the Sinclair Global Ballroom, chaos erupted. Vivian would learn the details later, pieced together from news reports and eyewitness accounts. But in the moment, all she knew was that her phone started exploding with notifications. News alerts, social media posts, messages from people she hadn't heard from in months. She was still in the parking garage waiting when her lawyer called. "Vivian, tell me you're seeing this." "Seeing what?" "Turn on the news, any channel. It's everywhere." Vivian found a live stream on her phone. The broadcast showed the Sinclair Global Ballroom in complete disarray. Guests standing in shock, staring at screens filled with documents. Board members shouting at security. Someone trying to pull the plug on the projectors while reporters filmed everything. And there, in the center of it all, was Marcus Hale. His face pale. His expression frozen somewhere between rage and panic as investors surrounded him, demanding explanations he couldn't give. The news anchors were already picking apart the documents. Forgeries, embezzlement, fraud. A conspiracy to remove a sitting CEO through fabricated evidence. Every crime Marcus had committed, now public, undeniable, permanent. "We need to move fast," her lawyer said. "I'm filing an emergency motion to dismiss all charges against you. With this evidence, the DA won't have a choice. But you need to come forward now, Vivian, before they spin this." "I'm on my way." She hung up, looked at the driver. "Take me to the federal building." "You sure?" "I'm sure." The car pulled out of the garage and into the night. Vivian watched the city lights blur past, her hands steady for the first time in months. It wasn't over yet. There would be hearings, investigations, legal battles that could take years. But the impossible part was done. She'd gotten the truth out. Now she just had to survive what came next. Adrian made it home around 2 a.m. His whole body ached. His clothes were soaked with sweat. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. He climbed the stairs to his apartment and found Mrs. Chen waiting in the hallway, still awake, her face tight with worry. "Where have you been?" "I've been calling." "I'm sorry, I had to. It's complicated." "Lily's asleep downstairs. She's been asking for you." "I'll get her, thank you. I'm sorry." Mrs. Chen studied him for a long moment. "Adrian, whatever you're involved in, be careful." "I will." "I mean it. That girl needs you." "I know." He went downstairs and carried Lily back up to their apartment. She barely stirred, just curled against his chest the way she used to when she was smaller. Adrian tucked her into bed, kissed her forehead, and sat on the floor beside her, watching her sleep. His phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "It worked. Thank you. I won't forget this. V." Adrian deleted the message and turned off his phone. He was exhausted, terrified, exhilarated. He had no idea what tomorrow would bring, didn't know if the police would come for him, didn't know if Marcus's people would retaliate, didn't know anything except that for the first time in years, he'd done something that mattered, something bigger than survival. He fell asleep on the floor beside Lily's bed and didn't wake until morning light came through the window. The news broke everywhere at once. By sunrise, every major outlet was covering the scandal. Disgraced CEO. Vivian Sinclair vindicated. Sinclair. Global board members arrested. CFO Marcus Hale facing criminal charges. Forged documents. Conspiracy. Fraud. The story had everything, and it dominated every channel. Adrian watched it unfold from his apartment, Lily eating cereal beside him, oblivious. She asked why he was staring at the TV, and he told her he was just checking the news. She went back to her breakfast. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Hayes." A woman's voice, professional. "My name is Sarah Chen. I'm an attorney representing Vivian Sinclair. She asked me to contact you." Adrian's stomach dropped.
Is she okay?
She's fine. She turned herself in early this morning with legal representation and the evidence you helped her obtain. The district attorney is already moving to dismiss all charges against her. She wanted you to know she's safe. Relief washed through him. Okay, thank you. There's something else. Ms. Sinclair is concerned about potential retaliation against you. Given your involvement, there's a possibility Marcus Hale's associates may try to. I can handle myself. Perhaps, but Ms. Sinclair has arranged for private security to monitor your building for the next several weeks, just as a precaution. Adrian blinked. She what? You won't see them, but they'll be there. If anyone tries to threaten you or your daughter again, they'll intervene. A pause. She also asked me to tell you she's working on something else, something more permanent, but it will take time. What does that mean? I'm not at liberty to say, but she wanted you to know she hasn't forgotten what you did for her. The lawyer hung up before Adrian could respond. He sat there holding the phone, trying to process. Private security, legal protection. Vivian hadn't just survived. She was already taking care of the people who'd helped her. It didn't feel real. The next week passed in a blur. The Sinclair Global scandal consumed the city. Board members resigned. Executives were arrested. Marcus Hale's bail was denied after prosecutors argued he was a flight risk. Investors filed lawsuits. The company's stock plummeted. Every day brought new revelations, new arrests, new evidence of corruption that went deeper than anyone had imagined. Vivian gave a press conference from her lawyer's office. Adrian watched it live, along with what felt like the entire city. She looked tired but strong, standing behind a podium in a navy suit, answering questions with the same sharp intelligence that had built Sinclair Global in the first place. I want to be clear, she said into the cameras. What happened to me was not a personal tragedy. It was corporate crime, systematic, calculated, and it was enabled by people who believed they were too powerful to face consequences. Today, they're learning otherwise. A reporter asked if she planned to return as CEO. A reporter asked, that decision will be made by the new board once a legitimate one is established. But yes, I intend to rebuild Sinclair Global into the company it was always meant to be. A company built on integrity, not corruption. Another reporter asked how she'd survived 6 months in hiding. Vivian paused. I survived because one person chose to see me as human when everyone else saw me as a headline. That person risked everything to help me when they had no reason to. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure that kind of decency is rewarded, not punished. She didn't say Adrian's name, didn't need to. He knew who she meant. 2 weeks after the gala, Adrian got an envelope delivered to his apartment. No return address. Inside was a check for $50,000 and a handwritten note. For rent and everything else. Don't argue. You earned this. V. Adrian stared at the check. It was more money than he'd seen in his entire life. More than enough to pay rent for a year. More than enough to fix his car, replace his broken lock, buy Lily new clothes that actually fit. More than enough to breathe. He deposited the check the next day, half convinced it would bounce. It didn't. That night, he took Lily out for dinner at a real restaurant, not fast food. A place with menus and waiters and tablecloths. She ordered chicken fingers and chocolate milk and talked about school while Adrian watched her, his chest tight with something he couldn't name. Dad, why are you crying? Lily asked. I'm not crying. Yes, you are. He wiped his eyes. I'm just happy, kiddo. Why? Because we're going to be okay. She smiled, chocolate milk on her upper lip, and went back to her chicken fingers like this was normal. Like they'd always had money for nice dinners and warm apartments and a future that didn't terrify him. Adrian let her believe it. A month after the gala, Vivian called him directly. Can you meet me? She asked. There's something I want to show you. They met at a cafe in the financial district. Not Brennan's. That place had closed down 2 weeks earlier, a victim of bad management and worse luck. This new cafe was brighter, cleaner, the kind of place Adrian used to walk past and wish he could afford. Vivian was waiting at a corner table, looking almost like herself again. Hairstyled, makeup on, wearing a coat that fit properly. When she saw Adrian, she stood and hugged him, which caught him completely off guard.
"Thank you for coming," she said. "You're buying, right? Because I'm still broke." She laughed, actually laughed. "I'm buying." They sat, ordered coffee.
Vivian pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "What's this?" Adrian asked. "A business proposal." He opened the folder. Inside were architectural plans, financial projections, legal documents. All of it centered around an address he recognized, the building where Brennan's Café used to operate.
"I bought the space," Vivian said.
The whole building, actually, and I want to turn it into something better. A real cafe, community-focused, fair wages, profit sharing for employees.
A place that actually gives a damn about the people who work there. Adrian stared at the plans. "Why?"
"Because you showed me what it looks like when someone cares about people who have nothing. And I want to build something that honors that. But I can't do it without you." "What do you mean?" I want you to run it. Co-owner. Full partner. You'd manage operations, hire staff, make decisions. It would be yours as much as mine." Adrian's throat went tight. "Vivian,
"I don't know anything about running a business. You know about working 12-hour shifts for people who don't appreciate you. You know about surviving on nothing. You know about treating people with dignity, even when nobody's watching. That's the foundation of everything that matters. The rest you can learn."
I can't afford, you don't need to. I'm handling the capital investment. You bring your labor and your expertise. We split ownership 60-40. You get 40. And before you argue, that's non-negotiable." Adrian looked at the plans, at the financial projections showing stable income and reasonable hours and actual benefits, at a future that looked nothing like the one he'd been living. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "Because you saved my life. Not just during the gala, before that. Every morning when you brought me coffee and treated me like I was worth something. You saved my life, Adrian. Now I want to help save yours." "I don't need saving. Everyone needs saving." Vivian's eyes were steady. "The question is whether we're brave enough to accept help when it's offered. So I'm offering, and I'm hoping you're brave enough to say yes."
Adrian sat back, overwhelmed. A month ago, he'd been terrified about rent. Now someone was offering him a business, a future, a life that didn't revolve around fear and exhaustion. "I have to think about Lily," he said. "She's been through so much already. I can't risk." "This isn't a risk. It's a partnership. And if it fails, you walk away with more than you started with."
"But I don't think it's going to fail. I think we're going to build something incredible." Adrian looked at her, really looked. She was different now, still sharp, still fierce, but there was something softer around the edges, something human that hadn't been there when she was sleeping in condemned buildings and digging through trash. They'd both changed. They'd both survived. And maybe that meant something. "Okay," he said. "I'm in." Vivian smiled. "Good, because I already signed the papers. We open in 8 weeks.
"You signed before I agreed?"
"I was confident you'd see reason." "That's insane. We've established that." They sat in the bright cafe, drinking expensive coffee Adrian didn't have to worry about paying for, talking about contractors and menus and hiring practices, planning a future neither of them had believed possible a month ago. Outside, Chicago winter was finally starting to break. The snow was melting. The days were getting longer. Spring was coming, slow and uncertain, but coming. And for the first time in years, Adrian let himself believe things might actually get better. The next 8 weeks were the hardest work Adrian had ever done, and he'd done plenty of hard work. Renovating the cafe meant stripping everything down to the studs and rebuilding from scratch. The space Brennan had left behind was a disaster. Broken equipment, water damage, walls that needed to be gutted. Adrian spent his days covered in drywall dust and paint, learning construction skills from contractors who treated him like an apprentice instead of an owner. Vivian showed up most mornings with coffee and pastries, rolling up her sleeves and working alongside him. She'd changed since reclaiming Sinclair Global. Still sharp, still commanding, but there was something different in the way she carried herself. Less armor, more openness. She laughed more, made jokes that actually landed, asked Adrian's opinion on things and listened when he answered. "You're different," Adrian said one afternoon while they were painting the back wall. "Different how, c'est ça?"
"I don't know, less scary." Vivian paused mid-stroke. I was scary? Terrifying, like you might evaporate me with your mind. She laughed and paint splattered on her shoes. I was surviving.
That requires a certain amount of terrifying. And now? Now I'm living. It's different. They worked in silence for a while, the only sound the scrape of brushes against plaster. Then Vivian spoke again, quieter. I forgot what this felt like. Building something with my hands. Being part of the actual work instead of just managing it from a distance. My father used to say you can't run a company if you don't understand every job in it. I forgot that somewhere along the way. You were running a billion-dollar corporation. I don't think they expected you to be fixing toilets.
Maybe they should have. She stepped back to examine her work. The paint was uneven, dripping in places. She frowned at it. I'm terrible at this. You're fine. I'm objectively terrible. Look at that drip. It gives it character. That's what people say when something's bad. Adrian grinned. Exactly.
She threw a paint-soaked rag at him, and he ducked, laughing. It was the most normal moment they'd had since meeting. Just two people renovating a cafe, arguing about paint drips, covered in dust and sweat, and something that felt like friendship. The cafe renovation attracted attention. News crews showed up twice, wanting to film Vivian Sinclair doing manual labor. She refused both times, politely but firmly, and eventually they left her alone. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This was personal. Adrian hired staff carefully. He put out ads emphasizing fair wages and good benefits, and was flooded with applications. People who'd worked minimum wage service jobs their entire lives, desperate for something better. He interviewed dozens, looking for the same qualities he'd needed when he was working at Brennan's. Reliability, kindness, the ability to stay calm during chaos. He hired 6 people. A single mother named Teresa who'd been laid off from a factory. A college student named James who was working 3 jobs to pay tuition. An older man named Robert who'd been homeless for 2 years and was trying to rebuild his life. A young woman named Maya who was supporting her disabled brother. 2 others with similar stories of struggle and survival. You're hiring people nobody else would hire, Vivian observed during one of their planning sessions. I'm hiring people who need a chance.
There's a difference. Is there? Yeah, nobody else would hire means they're unwanted. Need a chance means they're overlooked. It's not the same thing.
Vivian studied him.
You're a better person than I am. No, I just remember what it's like to be desperate.
She didn't argue. Training. The staff took 2 weeks. Adrian taught them everything Brennan had refused to teach him. How to work the espresso machine. How to handle difficult customers. How to manage inventory. But more importantly, he taught them they mattered. That their work had value. That they weren't disposable. This place runs on respect, he told them during their first meeting. You respect the customers, you respect each other, and I respect you. Nobody gets screamed at here. Nobody gets blamed for things outside their control. We're a team. Act like it. Teresa raised her hand. What if a customer's being awful? Tell me, I'll handle it. What if you're not here? Then you handle it. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to say no to abuse. I'd rather lose a customer than lose your dignity. They stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. I'm serious, Adrian continued. You're not servants. You're employees. There's a difference. So if someone treats you like garbage, you walk away and get me. I'll deal with it. That's my job.
James spoke up. Man, where were you 5 years ago when I was working at that gas station on Ashland?
Probably working a worse job than yours. They laughed, and the tension broke. The cafe opened on a Tuesday in late April. No grand ceremony, no press coverage. Just Adrian flipping the sign to open at 6 a.m. and unlocking the door. The first customer was Mrs. Chen. She shuffled in, looked around at the bright space with its clean tables and new equipment, and smiled. You did good, Adrian. Thank you for everything, for watching Lily, for believing in me. I didn't believe in you. I knew you. She patted his hand. There's a difference. Now get me coffee before I change my mind about this place. He made her coffee, and she sat by the window, watching the morning light fill the room. More customers trickled in. Some were regulars from Brennan's who'd heard about the reopening. Others were curious neighbors. A few were reporters who showed up despite Vivian's efforts to keep things low-key. Adrian served them all with the same care, and his staff followed his lead. By noon, the cafe was packed. Vivian arrived around 1, slipping in through the back entrance to avoid attention. She stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Adrian work the counter alongside Teresa, both of them moving in synchronized rhythm, taking orders, making drinks, handing out pastries, smiling at customers who smiled back. "It's working," she said when Adrian had a moment to breathe. "It's day 1. Ask me again in a month, say." "It's working," she repeated firmly. "Look at this place. Look at your staff. You built something real here. We built something." "No, you built it. I just paid for it." "That's not true." "It is." Vivian's voice softened. "You're the heart of this place, Adrian. Don't forget that." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and went back to work. The first month was brutal. Long hours, unexpected problems, equipment breaking, supply orders arriving wrong, customers complaining about things Adrian couldn't control. He worked open to close most days, getting home after Lily was asleep and leaving before she woke up. Mrs. Chen kept watching her, refusing payment, insisting Adrian was family now. He tried to argue, but she was immovable as stone. "You pay me when you can afford it," she said. "Right now you can't. So I do this because I want to. Stop arguing." Adrian stopped arguing. Lily started asking questions. Why was he always tired? Why didn't they see each other anymore? Was he going to leave like her mom did? That last question hit him like a punch. "Kiddo, I'm never leaving," he said, kneeling down to her level in their apartment. "Never. I'm working hard right now so we can have a better life. But I'm not going anywhere. Promise?" "Promise." She hugged him, small arms tight around his neck, and Adrian felt his chest crack open. He was trying so hard to build something better for her, but in the process he was losing time with her, missing moments he'd never get back. That night, he called Vivian. "I can't do this," he said. "Do what?" "Work 16-hour days. I have a daughter. She thinks I'm abandoning her." There was a long pause, then Vivian said, "Hire another manager. Someone to cover the days you need to be with Lily." "We can't afford that." "Yes, we can. I'll cover the cost until we're profitable enough to handle it." "Vivian, Adrian, this business only works if you're present for your daughter. That's non-negotiable. Hire someone. I'll handle the finances." It was... He wanted to argue, wanted to say he could manage it himself. But he was exhausted, and Lily's question about him leaving was still echoing in his head. "Okay," he said. "Thank you. Stop thanking me. We're partners. This is what partners do." He hired a woman named Patricia, 52 years old with 20 years of restaurant management experience. She was overqualified and underpaid at her previous job, and jumped at the chance to work somewhere that valued her. With Patricia handling morning shifts, Adrian adjusted his schedule. He started working afternoons and evenings, which meant he could take Lily to school every morning and have breakfast with her. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Lily noticed immediately. "You're here," she said one morning when he walked her to school. "I'm here." "Every day?" "Every day." She grabbed his hand, and they walked the 3 blocks together, talking about her classes and her friends and a project she was working on about butterflies. Adrian listened to every word, memorizing this moment, storing it away for the times when he felt like he was failing at everything. The cafe became a fixture in the neighborhood. People started coming not just for coffee, but for the atmosphere. The sense that this place was different, that the staff cared, that you weren't just a transaction. Adrian started a policy. Anyone who couldn't afford food could ask for a meal voucher, no questions asked. They kept a basket by the register where paying customers could add extra money to fund vouchers for others. Within 2 weeks, the basket was always full. Teresa pulled Adrian aside one afternoon. "You know people are going to take advantage of this, right? They're going to lie about needing help." "Probably." "And you're okay with that?" "I'd rather help 10 people who don't need it than turn away one person who does." She stared at him. "You're either really smart or really stupid. Can it be both?" She laughed and went back to work. Word spread. The cafe started showing up in local blogs. Food critics reviewed it, praising not just the quality but the atmosphere, the way staff treated customers, the way customers treated each other. One article called it a cafe that remembers why community matters. Vivian framed that article and hung it in the kitchen. "You did this," she said to Adrian. "We did this.
No, you did. I just wrote checks. You built the culture. You made this place what it is. Adrian looked at the framed article, at his staff working behind the counter, at customers laughing over coffee and pastries. For the first time in his life, he felt like he'd created something that mattered, something that would outlast him. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. 3 months in, Marcus Hale's trial began. Adrian didn't attend, but he followed the news coverage obsessively. Every night after closing the cafe, he'd sit in his apartment and read articles about testimony and evidence and legal arguments. Vivian was called to testify, and her appearance dominated headlines for days. She looked strong on the witness stand, composed. Every question answered clearly and precisely. The defense tried to rattle her, suggesting she'd orchestrated the entire scandal herself, but she didn't break. "I built Sinclair Global from the ground up," she said. "I spent 15 years of my life turning it into something I was proud of. Why would I destroy that? What would I gain?" The defense had no answer. Marcus took the stand in his own defense, which legal experts agreed was a mistake. He was arrogant, dismissive. He called Vivian emotionally unstable and suggested she'd fabricated evidence out of jealousy. The prosecution tore him apart. They showed the financial records Adrian had helped retrieve, showed the forged documents, showed emails between Marcus and board members planning Vivian's removal, showed bank transfers proving he'd embezzled millions. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Adrian watched the verdict live on his phone, standing in the cafe's kitchen after closing. When the judge read guilty, something in his chest loosened. A tension he'd been carrying for months finally released. It was over. Marcus was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. The board members who'd participated got varying sentences, some as long as a decade. Investors who'd been defrauded filed civil suits that would strip them of whatever money they had left. Sinclair Global's stock stabilized. Vivian was officially reinstated as CEO. She restructured the entire company, firing executives who'd enabled the corruption and promoting people who'd been overlooked. She implemented transparency measures, regular audits, whistleblower protections. She was rebuilding the company into what it should have been from the start. But she still showed up at the cafe every week, usually on Tuesday mornings, always ordering the same thing, black coffee and a blueberry muffin. "Don't you have a billion-dollar company to run?" Adrian asked one morning. "I do. But this place is more important." "How?" "Because this is real. Sinclair Global is money and power and abstractions. This is people, community, things that actually matter." Adrian poured her coffee. "You're getting philosophical in your old age." "I'm 30. That's not old." "Then stop acting like a retirement home resident." She threw a napkin at him. They sat together during the morning lull, watching the cafe fill with its usual crowd. Regulars who came every day. Students studying for exams. Parents with young children. Elderly folks reading newspapers. People who'd found a place where they belonged. "I've been thinking about expanding," Vivian said casually. Adrian nearly choked on his coffee. "What? Not this location? Another cafe? Same model? Fair wages? Community focus? Somewhere else in the city that needs it?" "Vivian, we've been open 3 months." "I know, but this works. Why not replicate it?" "Because I barely know what I'm doing here." "You know exactly what you're doing. That's the problem. You think you're improvising, but you're actually following instincts most business owners don't have. People skills. Empathy. The ability to make someone feel seen, those aren't things you can teach." Adrian set down his cup. "You're serious?" "Completely. I want to open 5 more locations over the next 2 years. Different neighborhoods, same principles, and I want you to oversee all of it." "I can't manage 6 cafes." "You won't manage them. You'll hire managers, train them to run things your way, and oversee the operation. I'll handle finances and expansion. You handle culture and hiring." "That's insane." "We've established that." Adrian laughed despite himself. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "No, because I've seen what we built here. I've seen how it changed this neighborhood, and I want to do it 5 more times, 10 more times, as many times as it takes." "Takes for what?" "To prove that business doesn't have to be ruthless, that you can make money and still treat people like human beings, that profit and decency aren't mutually exclusive." Vivian's eyes were bright. You showed me that, Adrian. Now I want to show everyone else. He wanted to say no, wanted to say it was too much, too fast, too risky. But looking at her face, seeing the passion there, the determination that had rebuilt an entire company from ashes, he couldn't. Okay, he said, but we do it right, slow, careful, no cutting corners. Agreed. And I get final say on hiring and culture. Agreed. And if it doesn't work, we shut it down. No ego. No pushing forward just because we started. Agreed. Vivian held out her hand. Partners. Adrian shook it. Partners. The second location opened 6 months later in a neighborhood on the south side that had been ignored by development for decades. Adrian found a space in a building that used to be a corner store, worked with contractors to renovate it, and hired a manager named David who'd been working fast food for 15 years and deserved better. The model worked. Within a month, the new cafe was as busy as the first. Same community atmosphere, same respect for staff, same basket of vouchers by the register that was always full. Vivian's plan to prove business could be decent was working. Adrian still worked mostly at the original location, but he visited the new one twice a week, checking in with David, making sure staff felt supported. The commute ate into his time, but Patricia covered the gaps, and Adrian made sure he was still home for Lily every evening. She was 7 now, thriving in school, making friends. She'd stopped asking if he was going to leave, started believing he'd keep his promise. One night, she asked about Vivian. Is she your girlfriend? Lily asked over dinner. Adrian nearly dropped his fork. What? No, she's my business partner. Emma's mom says you're dating. Emma's mom is wrong, but you see her all the time. Because we work together. Lily considered this. Do you want her to be your girlfriend? Kiddo, that's not... It's complicated. That means yes.
It means I don't know.
But the question stayed with him. He and Vivian had been working together for almost a year. They'd survived impossible odds. Built something real. Spent countless hours renovating, planning, arguing about paint colors and menu items and staffing decisions. They'd become friends somewhere along the way. Maybe more than friends. But Adrian was terrified to push it further. Terrified of losing what they'd built. Terrified she'd say no and things would become awkward and their partnership would crumble. So he said nothing. Winter came again. Chicago cold settled over the city, brutal and unforgiving. But this time, Adrian wasn't standing in it alone, wondering how to survive. He had a warm cafe, a daughter who smiled at breakfast, staff who depended on him, a partner who believed in him. The second anniversary of meeting Vivian approached. 2 years since he'd first seen her across the street, standing in the snow, looking lost. He decided to do something about it. He asked Patricia to cover his shift one Tuesday morning, picked up flowers from a vendor near the cafe, and went to Sinclair Global's headquarters. The building where he'd once risked everything now felt less intimidating. He walked through the lobby, took the elevator to the executive floor, and found Vivian's assistant. I need to see her, Adrian said. Do you have an appointment? No, but tell her Adrian's here. She'll make time. The assistant looked skeptical but made the call. 30 seconds later, she gestured toward the office. She'll see you now. Vivian's office was massive, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, expensive furniture, art on the walls. She sat behind a huge desk, phone pressed to her ear, but when she saw Adrian, she ended the call immediately. What's wrong? She asked, standing. Nothing's wrong. Then why are you here? You never come here. I brought you something. He held out the flowers. She stared at them. You brought me flowers. Yeah. Why? Because it's been 2 years since we met, and I wanted to say thank you. Adrian, you don't need to thank me. We've been over this. I'm not thanking you for the cafe. I'm thanking you for giving me a reason to stop being scared. He stepped closer. For 2 years before I met you, I was just surviving, getting by, making sure Lily had food and a place to sleep. But I wasn't living. And then you showed up, and suddenly I had a reason to fight for something bigger. So thank you. Vivian took the flowers slowly, her eyes shining. These are beautiful. They're just flowers. They're not just anything. They stood there in her massive office, surrounded by all the trappings of success. And for a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Vivian set the flowers on her desk and looked at him. Can I tell you something? She asked. Anything. I got this out. I was ready to give up before you. I'd been in hiding for months and I was so tired, so done. Every morning I woke up and thought maybe today I'd just stop fighting. Let them win, disappear. She paused. And then you brought me coffee. Not because you wanted something, not because you pitied me, just because you saw someone who was hungry and cold. And it reminded me that decent people still existed, that not everyone was Marcus Hale. Vivian, I'm not finished. She stepped closer. You saved my life, Adrian. Not just at the gala, every single day. And I don't know how to repay that except to keep showing up and trying to be the kind of person who deserves your faith. You already are that person. I'm working on it. You already are that. They were standing very close now, close enough that Adrian could see the flecks of gold in her eyes, close enough that he could feel his heart hammering against his ribs. Lily asked if you were my girlfriend, he said. Vivian's eyebrows rose. What did you tell her? That we're business partners. And I didn't know if that was the whole truth. What do you want it to be? Adrian took a breath. I want it to be more. But I'm terrified that if I say that, I'll ruin everything we've built. You won't ruin anything. You don't know that. Oh, yes, I do. Vivian reached up and touched his face, her hand warm against his cheek. Because I want it to be more too. And then she kissed him. It was gentle, careful. The kind of kiss that felt like a question and an answer at the same time. Adrian's hands found her waist, pulling her closer, and for a moment the entire city outside those windows disappeared. When they broke apart, both of them were smiling. So, Vivian said, are we doing this? I think we are. It's going to be complicated. Everything with us is complicated. True. She laughed. But we've handled complicated before. Yeah, we have. They stood there in her office, holding each other, while Chicago stretched out below them and the future opened up in ways neither of them had imagined 2 years ago. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was real, and it was theirs, and that was enough. Telling Lily was harder than Adrian expected. He waited until Saturday morning, made her favorite breakfast, and sat across from her at their small kitchen table. She was drawing in a coloring book, humming to herself, completely unaware that her father's stomach was tied in knots. Kiddo, can we talk for a minute? She looked up. Crayon paused mid-stroke. Am I in trouble? No, not at all. I just need to tell you something. Yo? She set down the crayon, suddenly serious. 7 years old and already learning to read the worry in his voice. Adrian took a breath. You know, Vivian, my business partner. The pretty lady who brings me cookies sometimes. Yeah, her. Well, we've been spending a lot of time together, and we've become really close. And I wanted you to know that we're dating now. Like, officially. Lily stared at him. Then she grinned. I knew it. You knew it? Emma's mom was right. Emma's mom talks too much. Is Vivian going to live here? What? No, we're taking things slow. But she's your girlfriend. Yes, and girlfriends turn into wives. Adrian's brain short-circuited. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Do you love her? The question hit him like a truck. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried to find words that made sense. I care about her a lot. That's not what I asked. You're 7. You're not supposed to ask questions like that. But do you? Adrian rubbed his face. When had his daughter become a detective? Yeah, I think I do. Lily nodded, satisfied. Good. I like her. She's nice, and she makes you smile. I smile. Not like that. Not before. She went back to coloring. Can we invite her for dinner? Maybe. That means yes. That means maybe. But Lily was right. It meant yes. Vivian came over the following Tuesday. She brought flowers for the apartment and a stuffed animal for Lily, a gray wolf that Lily immediately named Storm and refused to put down. They made pasta together, the 3 of them crowded in Adrian's tiny kitchen, Vivian laughing when the sauce splattered her shirt, and Lily asking 1,000 questions about what it was like to run a company. It's a lot of meetings, Vivian said, and paperwork, very boring. But you're the boss. You can do whatever you want. That's not really how it works. Then what's the point of being the boss? Vivian glanced at Adrian, smiling. That's an excellent question. They ate dinner around the small table, plates balanced on top of Lily's homework and coloring books because there wasn't enough space to clear everything. It was cramped and chaotic and nothing like the elegant restaurants Vivian was probably used to. But she didn't seem to care. She asked Lily about school, listened to stories about Lily's best friend getting in trouble for bringing a frog to class, helped clean up afterward while Lily watched cartoons. Your apartment is tiny, Vivian said while washing dishes. I know. I wasn't complaining, just observing. It's all we need. Is it? Adrian paused, dish towel in hand. What does that mean? It means you're doing well now. The cafe is profitable. You have money saved. You could afford something bigger. Something with a real bedroom for Lily instead of a curtain divider. I like it here. Do you? Or are you just used to it? The question bothered him more than it should have. He'd spent so long in survival mode that he'd stopped imagining anything different. This apartment was cheap, safe, familiar. Moving felt risky, like tempting fate. I'll think about it, he said. That's all I'm asking. But the conversation stuck with him. That night, after Vivian left and Lily was asleep, Adrian sat in the dark and looked around the apartment. The peeling paint, the radiator that barely worked, the water stains on the ceiling from the unit above. He told himself it was fine. Told himself they were lucky to have it. But maybe Vivian was right. Maybe he was just used to suffering. Used to accepting less because he'd never believed he deserved more. The thought kept him awake until sunrise. The third cafe location opened in August, then a fourth in October. Each one followed the same model: fair wages, community focus, staff treated like humans. And each one became exactly what the neighborhood needed. Adrian hired managers he trusted, trained them personally, and gave them autonomy to run things their way within the framework he'd established. He visited each location weekly, checking in with staff, listening to problems, adjusting policies when something wasn't working. It was exhausting, fulfilling, terrifying. He was responsible for 40 people now, 40 families depending on the paychecks he signed. The weight of it pressed on him constantly. But the cafes worked. All 4 of them. Revenue was steady. Staff turnover was almost non-existent. Customers kept coming back. Vivian pushed for a 5th location. Adrian said they should consolidate first. They argued about it over dinner at her apartment. A heated discussion that ended with both of them laughing because they'd somehow started arguing about paint colors instead. How did we get here, Bio? Adrian asked. You brought up the color of the bathroom tiles. No, I mean here. Us. This whole thing. Vivian set down her wine glass. They were sitting on her couch, the city lights visible through massive windows that made Adrian's apartment look like a closet. You mean, how did a broke cafe worker and a disgraced CEO end up running a small restaurant empire? Something like that. Stubbornness and luck. Mostly stubbornness. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. She leaned against him. We both refused to accept the lives we were handed. We fought back. And somehow, we found each other in the process. Adrian kissed the top of her head. I'm glad we did. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city. Adrian thought about how impossible this would have seemed 2 years ago. Dating Vivian Sinclair. Building a business. Having enough money that he didn't panic every time an unexpected expense appeared. It felt like someone else's life. I'm thinking about moving, he said suddenly. Vivian sat up. Really? Yeah, you were right. That apartment is too small. Lily deserves her own room, a real one. And I can afford it now. I just kept telling myself we were fine where we were. Where are you thinking? I don't know. Somewhere near the original cafe. So Lily doesn't have to change schools, but bigger. With heat that actually works. Vivian smiled. Want help looking? You don't have to. I know, but I want to. They started apartment hunting the following week. Adrian was stunned by how expensive everything was. Even with his income from the cafes, the rent prices made his head spin. Vivian kept pointing out places he immediately rejected as too nice, too big, too much. You're allowed to live somewhere pleasant, she said after he'd turned down the 5th apartment. I know. Do you? Because you keep looking at places that are barely better than where you are now. I'm being realistic. You're being scared. Adrian stopped walking. They were standing on a street corner in late November, cold wind cutting through his jacket. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're terrified that if you let yourself have nice things, they'll be taken away. So you keep yourself small, keep your expectations low. That way it hurts less when things fall apart. That's not,
Adrian, I've watched you turn down raises, refuse bonuses, apologize for taking up space in rooms you own half of. You're still living like you're one mistake away from losing everything, even though you're not, even though you haven't been for over a year. Her words hit harder than he wanted to admit. What if you're wrong? What if I take too much and it all collapses? Then we rebuild. That's what we do. Vivian grabbed his hand. But you can't spend your whole life preparing for disaster. At some point, you have to let yourself be happy. Adrian looked at her. At this woman who'd lost everything and clawed her way back through sheer determination, who'd trusted him when she had no reason to, who'd given him a partnership when he'd had nothing to offer but desperation and hope. Okay, he said, show me the nice apartments. They found a place 3 blocks from the original café. 2 bedrooms, working heat, a kitchen big enough for an actual table, windows that let in real light. The rent was more than Adrian had ever paid for anything, but it was manageable, comfortable. He signed the lease with shaking hands. Moving day was chaos. Mrs. Chen supervised from a folding chair, directing traffic while Adrian and Vivian hauled boxes up 3 flights of stairs. Lily ran between the apartments, declaring her new bedroom the best room ever, approximately 50 times. The original cafe staff showed up to help. Teresa brought food, James brought his truck. Maya brought her brother, who spent the whole time teaching Lily card tricks. By evening, they'd moved everything, assembled furniture, and ordered pizza for everyone crowded into the new living room. Speech? Teresa called out. Come on, boss. Say something. Adrian stood, embarrassed. I don't really do speeches. Too bad. You're doing one now. He looked around the room, at his staff who'd become friends, at Lily sitting on Vivian's lap, both of them watching him expectantly, at Mrs. Chen dozing in the corner, exhausted from supervising, at this life he'd somehow built from nothing. 2 years ago, he started, I was terrified every single day. Terrified I'd lose my job, lose my apartment, lose my daughter. I was barely surviving, and I'd convinced myself that was all I deserved. That people like me didn't get happy endings. The room was silent, and then I met someone who was just as scared as I was, just as broken, and for some reason we decided to help each other, to fight back against the people who wanted us to disappear. And somehow, impossibly, we won. He paused. This apartment, the cafes, all of you. None of this should exist. By every logical measure, I should still be working minimum wage and praying I make rent. But I'm not. Because one person saw me as human when everyone else saw me as disposable. And that changed everything. Vivian was crying. She didn't bother hiding it. So I guess what I'm saying is thank you to Vivian for believing I was worth the risk. To all of you for trusting me even though I had no idea what I was doing. To Mrs. Chen for watching Lily when I couldn't afford to pay you. To everyone who showed up when I needed help. Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you. Teresa started clapping, and everyone joined in. Adrian sat down, his face hot, and Lily immediately climbed onto his lap. That was a good speech, Dad. Thanks, kiddo. Are you happy now? The question caught him off guard. He looked around the apartment, at the working radiator, at the actual bedrooms, at the people he loved crowded into this space that was his, really his. Yeah, he said. I think I am. Winter settled over Chicago again, but this time Adrian watched it from heated rooms, from a cafe that bore his name, from a life that felt solid instead of fragile. The cafes continued growing, the 5th location opened in January, followed by a 6th in March. Vivian's vision was becoming reality. A network of community-focused businesses that proved profit and compassion weren't enemies. Adrian hired a director of operations to help manage the expansion. A woman named Sandra who'd worked in corporate restaurants for decades and was excited to finally work somewhere that valued people over productivity metrics. With Sandra handling logistics, Adrian could focus on culture and training, making sure every new location felt like the original. Sinclair Global was thriving too. Vivian had completely restructured the company, implementing transparency measures that were becoming industry standards. Other corporations started copying her model. Business schools taught case studies about her comeback. She was invited to speak at conferences, write op-eds, advise politicians. She hated all of it. "I don't want to be a symbol," she told Adrian one night. They were in his apartment, Lily asleep in her actual bedroom with an actual door. "I just want to run my company and spend time with the people I care about." "Too late. You're inspirational now." "That's your fault." "How is it my fault?" "You showed me what actual integrity looks like. Now I can't go back to accepting less." Adrian smiled. "You're welcome. I wasn't thanking you." Sounded like a thank you. She threw a pillow at him. They spent more time together. Dinners, movies, walking through the city on Sunday mornings while Lily was at a friend's house. Normal couple things that Adrian had never expected to experience. Vivian fit into his life seamlessly, and somehow he fit into hers, despite the massive gap in their backgrounds. Lily adored her. They'd bonded over a shared love of terrible reality TV shows that Adrian refused to watch. Sometimes he'd come home to find them on the couch, shouting at the television while contestants made increasingly bad decisions. "They're idiots," Lily would declare. "Complete idiots," Vivian would agree. "Are you two criticizing strangers again?" "Yes," they'd say in unison. It was the kind of domestic normalcy Adrian had stopped believing was possible, and it terrified him. Because the better things got, the more he waited for disaster, for the moment when everything fell apart, and he'd realize it had all been temporary. Vivian noticed. "You're doing it again," she said one evening. "Doing what?" "Waiting for the other shoe to drop." "I'm not." "Adrian, I can see it on your face. You're happy, but you don't trust it. You keep expecting someone to come along and take it away." He wanted to deny it, but she was right. He wanted, what if we get complacent? What if we stop being careful and everything collapses? Then we deal with it together. Vivian took his hand. "But you can't live your whole life braced for impact. At some point, you have to accept that maybe things are actually okay. What if I don't know how?" "Just say it." Then you learn. That's what we've been doing this whole time. Learning how to trust that good things can last. It sounded simple when she said it, but Adrian had spent so many years in survival mode that relaxing felt dangerous. Like letting his guard down would invite catastrophe. Still, he tried. He stopped checking his bank account obsessively. Stopped calculating how many months of rent he could afford if everything went wrong. Stopped planning escape routes for disasters that hadn't happened. It was hard. Harder than building the cafes. Harder than breaking into Sinclair Global. But slowly, painfully, he started to believe that maybe his life wasn't a temporary reprieve from suffering. Maybe it was just his life. And maybe that was allowed. The second anniversary of the original cafe's opening arrived in April. Adrian wanted to do something special, so he closed the cafe for a private party. Staff from all 6 locations. Regular customers. People who'd been part of the journey from the beginning. The place was packed, music playing, food everywhere. People laughing and talking and celebrating something Adrian still couldn't quite believe he'd built. Teresa cornered him by the pastry case. "You did good, boss." "We did good. All of us." "Nah, this was you. Don't diminish it." "I'm not." "You are. You always do. Someone compliments the cafes and you deflect. Someone says you changed their life and you act like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. You built something real here. Something that matters. So for once, just accept the compliment." Adrian's throat tightened. "Okay, thank you. That wasn't so hard, was it?" "Incredibly hard." She laughed and hugged him. "You're a good man, Adrian Hayes. Don't forget that." Later, Vivian pulled him aside. They stood by the window watching the party, and she handed him an envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a deed. Adrian stared at it, confused. "I don't understand." "I'm signing over full ownership of the original cafe to you. My shares, all of it. It's yours." "What?" "No. Vivian, we're partners." "What?" "We are. But this place was always yours. I just helped you build it. Now it's officially in your name." Adrian's hands shook. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. And you will, because you earned it. Vivian's voice was firm. Everything we built came from your vision, your compassion, your refusal to accept that people like us don't matter.
I was just smart enough to follow your lead. That's not true. It is, and it's time you acknowledged it.
Adrian looked at the deed. His name printed on official paper. Proof that he owned something, that he'd created something permanent, something that would outlast him. He started crying. Not sad tears. The kind that come when you finally realize you've made it through the worst and somehow ended up somewhere good. Vivian hugged him, and they stood there while the party continued around them. Two people who'd been strangers 2 years ago, who'd been broken and desperate and convinced they'd lost everything, who'd decided to fight back anyway. That summer, Vivian proposed. Not with a ring, not in some elaborate public gesture. She asked him on a Tuesday morning while they were drinking coffee in his apartment, Lily at summer camp, both of them exhausted from working late.
I want to marry you, she said casually. Adrian choked on his coffee. What? You heard me. That's not, you can't just… He set down his mug. Are you serious?
Completely. We've been together a year and a half. We own businesses together. We're raising Lily together. We've survived impossible things together. Why not make it official? Because that's insane. We've established that. Adrian laughed despite himself. You're supposed to let me propose.
Why? I'm perfectly capable of asking. That's not the point.
Then what is the point?
He didn't have an answer. Or maybe he did, but it was too tangled in fear and doubt to articulate.
Marriage felt permanent, real, like making promises he'd failed at before. What if I'm not good enough? He asked quietly.
Vivian set down her coffee and took his hands. Adrian, you're the best person I know. You're kind, patient, selfless, and too stubborn for your own good.
You've given me a life I never thought I'd have again. So stop thinking you're not enough and just answer the question. Do you want to marry me or not? Adrian looked at her, at this brilliant, fierce woman who'd chosen him when she could have chosen anyone, who'd fought beside him, built beside him, loved him despite every reason not to.
Yeah, he said, I do. She smiled, and it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Good, because I already bought a ring. Of course you did. It's in my purse.
I've been carrying it around for a month waiting for the right moment. And the right moment was Tuesday morning in my apartment. The right moment was now. She pulled out a simple silver band and slid it onto his finger. It fit perfectly. They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the original café. Just close friends, staff, Mrs. Chen, Lily, who served as flower girl and took her job incredibly seriously. No elaborate decorations, no expensive catering, just coffee and pastries and people they loved. Lily cried during the vows. So did Teresa. So did Adrian, though he tried to hide it. You're crying, Vivian whispered. Shut up. It's sweet. I said shut up. She kissed him, and everyone cheered. The reception lasted hours. People told stories, shared memories, talked about how the cafe had changed their lives, how having a place that valued them as humans instead of transactions had made them believe things could be different. You did that? Vivian said to Adrian while they danced to music someone had queued up on their phone. You made people believe. We did that. No, you. I just followed your example. I don't think that's true. It is. You showed me what it looks like to care about people without expecting anything in return, to build something based on decency instead of profit. That was all you.
Adrian pulled her closer. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Maybe. But I definitely couldn't have done it without you.
They swayed together while the cafe filled with laughter and light. Outside, Chicago was doing what it always did, moving forward, building, changing. But inside this small space, time felt suspended, like they'd carved out a piece of the world that belonged only to them. Life didn't get easier after the wedding. Problems still appeared. Equipment broke, staff quit, revenue fluctuated. Lily struggled in school. Vivian dealt with board members who resented her reforms. Adrian dealt with managers who didn't share his vision, but they handled it together. When the 8th cafe location struggled, Adrian and Vivian worked with the manager to restructure operations instead of giving up. When Lily got in trouble for defending a classmate from bullies, Adrian and Vivian sat with her and talked about standing up for others, even when it's hard. When Sinclair Global faced a hostile takeover attempt from a competitor, Adrian sat with Vivian through every late-night strategy session, making sure she ate and slept and remembered she wasn't alone. They built a life. Messy, imperfect, real. The cafes became institutions, places where people went not just for coffee, but for community, where staff were treated like family, where anyone who needed help could find it without judgment. Adrian started a nonprofit alongside the cafes, a job training program for people who'd been homeless, incarcerated, or otherwise locked out of traditional employment. He partnered with social services, built relationships with landlords willing to give people second chances, created pathways for people to rebuild their lives. It was slow work, frustrating. Some people succeeded, others relapsed, disappeared, broke his heart with their struggles. But enough people made it, enough lives changed, enough families stayed together, and that was enough. 5 years after meeting Vivian, Adrian stood in the original cafe early one morning. The space was empty, quiet, sun streaming through the windows he'd once cleaned as an employee terrified of losing his job. Now he owned this place, had built 7 others, employed over 60 people, married a woman who'd rebuilt an empire, raised a daughter who was thriving. He thought about the version of himself who'd first seen Vivian across the street, that desperate, exhausted man who'd been one paycheck from disaster, who'd believed he deserved nothing better than survival. That man wouldn't recognize this life, wouldn't believe it was possible. But it was, not because of luck, not because of some fairy tale intervention, but because 2 broken people had refused to accept that being broken meant being finished, because they'd chosen to help each other when nobody else would, because they'd fought for something better even when the odds said they'd fail. The cafe door opened. Vivian walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee from a competitor down the street. "Why are you buying coffee somewhere else?" Adrian asked. "Research. I wanted to make sure we're still better." "Are we?" "Obviously." She handed him a cup. "Why are you here so early?" "Just thinking." About how impossible this all seemed. How many things had to go right for us to end up here? Vivian sat beside him at the counter. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think nothing about this was luck. I think we made this happen. You and me. We decided our lives were worth fighting for, and we fought. That's not luck. That's courage." "I didn't feel courageous." "Nobody does? That's how you know it's real courage. It's being terrified and doing it anyway." They sat in the quiet cafe, drinking coffee, watching morning light transform the city outside. Lily was at home, probably still asleep. The staff would arrive in an hour to prep for opening. Customers would flood in. The day would unfold like every other day. Busy, chaotic, full, and Adrian would handle it, because he'd learned something crucial over the past 5 years. He'd learned that surviving wasn't the same as living, that accepting less wasn't humility, it was fear, that the people who told you to be grateful for scraps were usually the ones hoarding the feast. He'd learned that kindness wasn't weakness, that helping others didn't make you a fool, that building something based on decency instead of profit wasn't naive, it was revolutionary. Most importantly, he'd learned that broken people could heal, that being destroyed didn't mean staying destroyed, that the end of one life could be the beginning of another, if you were brave enough to reach for it. "What are you thinking about now?" Vivian asked. Adrian smiled. "That I'm glad you dug through my dumpster." Romantic. "It's true. If you hadn't been desperate enough to eat garbage, we never would have met." When you put it that way, it sounds significantly less romantic. But accurate. Disgustingly accurate. He kissed her and she kissed him back, and outside the window, Chicago woke up to another day, another chance, another beginning. The cafe door would open soon. People would flood in seeking coffee and warmth and a place that remembered their names. Staff would arrive ready to work somewhere that valued them. The city would keep moving, keep changing, keep demanding more from everyone trying to survive in it. But inside this small space, Adrian Hayes and Vivian Sinclair had built something different, something that proved people mattered more than profit, that second chances were possible, that even when the world tried to erase you, you could fight back and win. Not perfectly, not easily, but truly. And in the end, that was the only thing that mattered. Not the money or the success or the victory over people who'd tried to destroy them. What mattered was that they'd survived. They'd built something real. They'd helped others do the same. They'd taken two broken lives and made them whole. That was the story. Not a fairy tale. Not a miracle. Just two people who'd refused to accept that being disposable meant staying that way. Who'd chosen to see each other as human when everyone else saw only obstacles. Who'd built something better because they'd been through the worst and knew what the world looked like from the bottom. The morning light filled the cafe. Vivian finished her coffee. Adrian stood to unlock the door. Outside, the city waited. Inside, they were ready. And that was enough.